My parents and in-laws convinced me my loving husband was trapping me, almost ruined my marriage before I found out the truth. Hey, so I'm 26 and I've been married to my husband, Marcus, he's 27, for the past 3 years. But our history goes way back. We were childhood buddies because our families were close, and we'd always hang out whenever there were gatherings or parties. As we got older, especially during high school, we kind of drifted apart. But then, by pure chance, we ended up at the same business school, reconnected, and eventually that friendship turned into something more. We started dating, and a few years later, we got married. Things were great for a while, but over the past year, things hit a rough patch. Marcus landed a job at one of the top firms in the state. It came with a great salary and amazing benefits. On the other hand, I was floundering. I had quit my job, hoping to find something better, something that would help me feel like I was on equal footing with Marcus, but it just didn't happen. I was unemployed for a few months, bouncing between interviews, trying to find a role that matched what I thought I deserved. I know it might sound awful, but I've always been ridiculously competitive. I couldn't wrap my head around why he was thriving while I kept hitting walls. It wasn't that I was jealous of Marcus, really, I wasn't, but whenever he'd talk about work and how well he was doing, I couldn't help feeling like I was being left behind. He was incredibly supportive the whole time, always cheering me on, but even with all that, I felt out of place. I wanted to succeed too, I needed to. Eventually, the pressure started getting to me, and depression started creeping in. I put on a brave face around Marcus, but my parents noticed something was off. One day, I ended up pouring my heart out to them, thinking they'd understand. That was a mistake. They used that conversation as ammo to drive a wedge between me and Marcus. They told me he was going to throw himself into work and forget all about me. And with Marcus pulling long hours and barely spending time at home, it only made their words feel more believable. They started pushing this narrative that Marcus was trying to ease me into the role of a housewife, that since I wasn't working, I was already doing all the chores and slowly slipping into that mold. At first, I didn't see a problem with it. He was earning a lot, so I figured it made sense that I handled things at home. But after my parents pointed it out, I began to wonder if maybe they were right. Was Marcus really trying to make me into some stay-at-home version of myself? My parents had always hammered it into my head growing up that if I wasn't working, I wasn't worth much. That's literally what they'd say, no exaggeration. So I grew up thinking that my only value came from building a career. Being a good wife or friend never felt like a priority. What mattered most to me was climbing the ladder, getting the top job, earning the best paycheck, even if that meant outshining my own husband. So when I told them I was feeling like a failure because Marcus was out there succeeding while I was stuck, they ran with it. They started planting seeds in my mind, saying he was trying to make me feel small on purpose, that he wanted to control me. And then, strangely enough, even my in-laws began chiming in with similar comments. They said Marcus probably wanted a wife like his mom, who stayed home while his dad worked, and that he was slowly and quietly molding me into that same kind of role. Honestly, if it had just been my parents, maybe I would have shrugged it off. But hearing the same ideas from his side of the family too? That shook me. It made me think that maybe there was some truth to it. I don't know what came over me, but one day I just packed up and left. I didn't tell Marcus why, didn't leave a note, nothing. I was overwhelmed by the job hunt, my own insecurities, and the pressure from both families. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I cut off everyone. I deactivated all my social media, changed my number, and moved into a small rental on the outskirts of town using what little savings I had. For the next 2, maybe 3 weeks, I barely functioned. I didn't do anything, just laid in bed crying most days. I'd force myself to eat 1 meal a day, and that was about it. I lost a ton of weight and started looking pretty frail and, honestly, unwell. I avoided leaving the house unless I absolutely had to get groceries, and even then, I'd cover my face so nobody would recognize me. It got so bad that I even started thinking about filing for divorce. That's how far gone I was mentally. But then, somehow, Marcus tracked me down with the help of the police and brought me home. The place I was staying didn't even have furniture, just a mattress. I hadn't seen myself in a mirror in weeks, so when I got home and finally looked, I was stunned. I looked like someone completely different, like a ghost of myself. I hadn't brushed my hair, my teeth, or even showered in days. And the moment Marcus saw me, he just hugged me tight and started crying. He was so relieved to see me safe. He kept saying how much he loved me and how he'd been terrified of losing me. That moment shattered me. I felt so ashamed for leaving him over something that, in hindsight, felt so minor. I realized I'd let my job situation and the toxic voices around me cloud everything. It wasn't just depression, it was all the manipulation, the doubts, and my own perfectionism pulling me down. Not long after I came back, I started therapy. I didn't tell Marcus the full story, though. I just said I left because I was feeling like a burden and didn't want to weigh him down. That was partly true, but I left out all the rest, the lies, the pressure, the noise in my head. Fast forward to today, and I'm doing so much better. I've got a steady job now. It's not as high-powered or flashy as Marcus's, but it gives me stability, and that's exactly what I need right now. I'm honestly content now, because I've come to understand something important. Marcus isn't my rival. We're partners, and whatever we do, we're supposed to be doing it together. Therapy really helped me untangle a lot of the chaotic thoughts that used to run through my head. It calmed me down and gave me some clarity. Even though my parents and in-laws said some pretty harmful stuff when I was in a dark place, I still kept in touch with them. I don't know why I did, maybe out of habit or guilt. But after I returned from disappearing, they never once brought up the things they said to me back then. Instead, they acted completely shocked by what I'd done and told me they had been worried sick. I still don't fully understand why they were so eager to pull me and Marcus apart, but after everything, I just couldn't bring myself to fully trust them again. Especially once I started unpacking it all in therapy, I realized they weren't trying to help me, they were feeding off the drama. And unfortunately, they got exactly what they wanted. So, I kept them in my life, but from a distance. Things have been awkward between us ever since. Marcus, though, never brought it up. I think he just assumed their weird behavior was because of my sudden disappearance, and maybe he thought I was acting off for the same reason. He became the one holding all the awkwardness together, keeping things civil without asking too many questions. I didn't open up to him about any of it, at least not until recently. It's been a while since I came back, and I'm in a much better place now. So about a week ago, I finally felt ready to tell Marcus the full truth. He deserved that. I couldn't keep pretending everything had been fine, and honestly, the guilt was starting to eat me alive. I laid it all out, how I felt crushed watching him succeed while I was struggling to even land a job, and how that imbalance messed with my head. He listened, and I could tell he was trying to understand where I was coming from. He even comforted me. Then I told him the rest. I told him what my parents and his parents had said to me, how they'd pushed the idea that he was trying to turn me into a housewife, that he was manipulating me into staying home while he advanced in his career. And I admitted that I got scared and ran away without saying a word. I told him how deeply I regretted it, and that I could now see how wrong I'd been. The whole thing had been a mix of my own insecurity and the poison my parents and in-laws had fed me. I apologized over and over for how I handled it. Marcus's expression changed when I got to that part. He went completely silent for a second, then grabbed his phone. For a moment, I panicked. I thought maybe he was mad at me. But instead, he called his parents right then and there, and the moment they answered, he let them have it. He didn't hold back. He told them how furious he was that they tried to sabotage our marriage. He said he never wanted anything to do with them again, then hung up and blocked them on the spot. When he turned back to me, he told me he felt the same way about my parents. He didn't want to interact with them anymore either. I asked him if he was angry with me, and to my relief, he said he wasn't. He said he understood that I'd grown up being told I had to be the best, that I always had to win. And suddenly, someone else, my own husband, was doing better than me. That shook me in a way I couldn't handle, and it made me act out. He said he respected that I was dealing with mental and emotional struggles, and that he could forgive me because I was trying to heal and grow. But our parents? They didn't have any excuse. They knew what they were doing, and they took advantage of the fact that I was vulnerable. That made him sick to his stomach, and honestly, I agreed. They could have helped me, encouraged me to talk things through with him, but instead, they made things worse. I told him I didn't understand why our parents would go to such lengths to destroy our relationship, and that's when Marcus told me something I hadn't considered. He said they probably didn't even have a clear reason. According to him, our families had never really liked each other, even though they'd played nice all those years. He said that as far back as he could remember, whenever we went to family events, his parents would start gossiping about mine the second they got in the car. Maybe my parents did the same thing behind closed doors, and I just never realized it. Marcus said he'd always known there was tension between the families, but they never said anything against us getting married because they knew it wouldn't change our minds. If they had tried to stop us, we probably would have just gone ahead and done it anyway and possibly cut them off. So instead, they put on an act, waited for an opportunity, and when things got rocky between us, they pounced. Looking back, I think he might be right. His theory made too much sense not to believe. So I did what he did, I blocked both sets of parents. But then, just yesterday, my parents managed to reach me by email. They asked me to unblock them so they could talk. I wasn't sure what to do, but I figured one last conversation for closure wouldn't hurt. So I called them. I told them everything, that I believed Marcus, that I knew now what they'd done, and that's why I'd cut them off. They swore they never meant to hurt us and said they only wanted the best for me. They even claimed that after speaking with Marcus's parents back then, they'd found it strange how eager they were to split us up. But according to my parents, it wasn't the same situation. They claimed they were just trying to look out for their daughter. My mom even broke down in tears during our call, saying she couldn't believe I'd ever think they would purposely try to break up my marriage. She said everything they did came from a place of love and concern for me. She insisted she still respected and cared about Marcus, but she also felt like it was wrong of him to accuse them of trying to destroy our relationship on purpose. Then my dad jumped in and said he had no clue what my in-laws were up to, but he was confident that he and my mom didn't share the same intentions. He said it was heartbreaking to realize their own daughter thought they would ever try to hurt her or ruin her marriage. Both of them sounded really emotional, genuine, even. And after that conversation, I just felt stuck. I honestly didn't know what to believe. Deep down, I didn't think Marcus would ever lie to me or say something just to drive a wedge between me and my parents. But I also wasn't sure if his theory about our families had been entirely spot on. I started questioning everything. Should I give my parents another chance? Or should I apologize for blocking them without letting them explain? The whole thing had my head spinning. I felt like a complete jerk, but at the same time, I've learned the hard way not to blindly trust my feelings when it comes to situations like this. Last time I did, I nearly blew up my entire marriage. So this time, I held back from making any sudden moves. I figured I'd sit with it a bit, and then I saw some of the responses to my earlier update. Pretty much everyone in the comments agreed with Marcus. So I brought it up to him again, told him everything about what my parents had said on the call, and he doubled down. He told me he was absolutely certain this was all just a performance, and I shouldn't fall for it. Marcus was gentle about it, but he was firm too. He told me that I'm still mentally working through a lot, and that lately, I've been way too open to anything people say. He wasn't wrong. Ever since I confided in my parents about feeling inadequate in my career, I've been latching on to every opinion around me like it's gospel. It's not healthy, and I know it. I've become way too vulnerable. Marcus was the first person to ever tell me that maybe I shouldn't be so trusting or hopeful when it comes to the people closest to me. He said not everyone has my best interest at heart, especially not my parents, who clearly have some deep-rooted resentment toward his side of the family. I didn't fully understand what he meant until he told me something I'd never known. Apparently, a long time ago, my dad's brother, my uncle, was engaged to Marcus's mom's cousin. They were all set to get married, but then my uncle got caught cheating with his secretary just days before the wedding. It turned into a massive scandal. The wedding was cancelled, and the fallout between our families was ugly. But since it happened years ago, and both families had public reputations to protect, they never openly acknowledged the rift. So even though they let Marcus and me play together as kids, and didn't object when we decided to get married, they were just pretending. Marcus knew about all of it. I didn't. And that's probably why I never saw any of it coming. Now that I'm aware of the history, it all makes more sense, especially why both families seem to jump at the first chance to split us up. I just don't understand why my parents went behind my back and involved his parents in the first place. What were they hoping to accomplish by bringing them into our personal issues? It's like they were teaming up to sabotage us, and that's just gross. I can't imagine any decent person doing that and thinking it's okay. It's been a week since I spoke to my parents, and I haven't reached out again, and honestly, I don't think I will. With everything I know now, it's pretty clear to me that they were trying to wreck my marriage. And if that's what they wanted, then they should have had the courage to speak up before the wedding, not now when it's convenient. Looking back, I wish I had just gone to Marcus in the first place instead of dragging my parents into our problems. He and I could have worked through it like adults, privately. But I let myself get swayed. As for Marcus, he hasn't spoken to his parents since that final phone call. He always knew the truth about the family drama, but he never brought it up with me. When I asked him why, he said he figured I already knew but just didn't want to talk about it. So he respected that and stayed quiet. And honestly, I probably should have known, or at least suspected something. But I didn't, because I never thought my parents were anything other than what they presented to the world. They raised me to be hyper-competitive, independent, and fiercely self-reliant, which are all good traits in moderation. But somewhere along the way, I absorbed this idea that my worth came from outdoing everyone around me. It made me self-centered and overly ambitious to the point where I couldn't see past my own achievements. I stopped thinking about what other people needed from me, including Marcus. Now I realize that a lot of that mindset came straight from my parents. That's who they are, and that's what they passed on to me. So, in the end, I turned into exactly what my parents had raised me to be, someone who charged forward without thinking how her actions affected the people who loved her. The day I walked out on Marcus without a word? That wasn't just something I came up with on my own. My parents encouraged it. And it didn't help that Marcus's parents weren't exactly rooting for us either. But that's all behind me now. I've pulled myself out of that toxic circle, and they can't twist me around anymore or push me to make choices that would only hurt me down the road, like walking out on my husband again. Update 2, it's been a few days since the last time I shared anything, and just like I said, I've kept my distance from my parents. After talking everything over with Marcus and reading through the responses here, which confirmed what I'd already started to believe, I blocked them again. It's clear now that they were trying to manipulate me. Side note, I've seen some people in the comments calling me stupid and blaming me for all of this. And look, maybe I was naive, but throwing insults at someone who's in intensive therapy and working through real emotional damage isn't exactly helpful. I'm not asking for sympathy, but a little basic decency goes a long way. You don't know what someone else is dealing with behind the scenes. The truth is, I was easy to manipulate because I wasn't in a good headspace. That's not an excuse, it's just the truth. Anyway, something happened today that caught me off guard. My parents tried to drop by our house. I wasn't home, I was out with a couple of friends, but Marcus was. He didn't call or text to bother me while I was out, which I appreciate. He waited until I came home to tell me what happened. Apparently, as soon as my parents saw Marcus, they went off on him. Just unleashed. They called him all kinds of awful names and accused him of manipulating me and stealing their daughter. Which, first of all, makes no sense. I'm married to him. I'm not an object to be stolen. Nobody owns me, not Marcus and certainly not my parents. What they really meant, I think, was that Marcus had turned me against them. But the truth is, he didn't have to. They did that all on their own. They were the ones who tried to pull me away from my marriage in the first place. They took advantage of me when I was mentally vulnerable and going through a depressive episode. That's on them. They couldn't even put their petty grudge against Marcus's family aside for my sake. Their hatred ran deeper than their concern for my happiness. So no, I don't feel guilty for cutting them off, especially not after what they said to my husband. They actually told Marcus they regretted not making up lies about him to push me into filing for divorce. They said that's what he deserved because, in their eyes, his family was nothing but cheaters and liars. The irony there? My parents are no saints themselves. They just finally exposed who they really are, and now I don't have to waste any more energy pretending to care. I'm done, truly done. And I see now that a lot of the personal issues I've had to untangle stem directly from how I was raised. Update 3 is it's been almost a month now, and today I got a lovely surprise from my parents' lawyer. I've officially been removed from their will. Everything's going to my cousins instead. And to make it even pettier, I was told the only way I could fix it was by divorcing Marcus. To which I say, nice try. Seriously. Do they really think I can be bribed into leaving my husband? That I'd trade my marriage for an inheritance? It's laughable. What they clearly don't realize is that Marcus is doing incredibly well in his career right now. We're financially stable, we're happy, and we don't need a single cent from them. We've built our own life, on our own terms. And it's honestly kind of pathetic. Marcus's parents, for all their early issues, haven't said a word to either of us since he cut them off. At least they're handling things with some level of maturity. My parents, on the other hand, are throwing tantrums and trying to dangle money like it'll fix everything. If their goal was to push me away for good, they're doing a great job. I have no intention of going back. Ever. Because if they think they can buy my loyalty or control my marriage with threats and cash, then they never really knew me at all. I'm not a sellout. Especially not when it comes to my marriage and especially not when it comes to Marcus.